Should we talk about Boston? We should talk about Boston. All right, so Boston. Oh boy. Boston has just recently made an announcement. 70,000 entries are going to be made available to the public, to the first 70,000 runners who are going to be allowed to run a virtual Boston Marathon. And this has sent the whole running community in a complete whirlwind of back and forth banter and arguments, it's not fair type conversations, and it goes on and on. So this is an interesting move by the Boston organization because the Boston Marathon is the most prestige marathon in all of the world. It is the oldest marathon. It is the creme de la creme of the whole running world. You know, many people who run, who love the whole endurance world, endurance running, wants to be running in Boston. It's a goal of many, many, many runners. And because of the qualification, the whole, to run Boston, people just can't sign up to run Boston like they do the LA Marathon or something like that. There's a qualification that you have to do to run this race. And because of that qualification process, just adds more prestige to the Boston Marathon. So the Boston Marathon itself is almost like, it's like a fraternity almost. Can we call it that? Fraternity, a sorority. It's just like it's an exclusive club of the running community that people who can claim themselves as a Boston runner. There's the runners, but then there are Boston runners, people who made it to that race. And so a lot of runners hold it to a lot of esteem. They hold it to a really high level, something that's very near and dear to their hearts. And again, it's kind of like that fraternity. It's an exclusive club that only certain people can go in to this club, and those people that can go into this club are people who qualified for the race and then ran the race. Because as many people know, simply just qualifying for the race is not enough. That qualification has to actually get you to be accepted into the race, and then you have to run it. Okay, none of this just, hey, I qualified for Boston. Yeah, there's this group of people who qualified for Boston, but then there are the people who ran Boston, because there are people who qualify, but then don't actually get to do Boston. That is an unfortunate part. So again, that just makes Boston just so much more better than these other races, because the qualification process is just a really nail-biting, gut-wrenching, just overly dramatic process. So then Boston just turns all of that nonsense up on its head by saying, hey, we are going to be doing a virtual race. Now, they're still trying to do a smaller in-person race for Boston, but then they said hey, but on top of that, we're going to have 70,000 entries for a virtual Boston, where you get a t-shirt, you get a medal, you get a downloadable bib or actual bib. I'm not sure about those details, but there's no qualification for that. You just sign up. It's there. The first 70,000 people who sign up for it. Now those entries could go in a couple of weeks. They can go in a couple of hours. Who knows? It really depends. But it just turned the whole thing up on its head, because there's no qualification for it. You do not have to qualify for this virtual race. You just sign up, just like you do for the LA Marathon or for the San Francisco Marathon or for the whatever marathon that requires no qualification. You just sign up. So yeah, the arguments that people have gone over this is, they're saying hey, this is taking away the prestige of the Boston Marathon race. The Boston Marathon is this exclusive club of people who have qualified and ran the world's most prestige race. I get it. I get completely where they're coming from. It makes sense. Boston is special. Boston is a special race that many people want to be a part of. But now, 70,000 people can be part of it, and these 70,000 people, a good chunk of them may have never qualified for Boston. They might have been trying for years. They can do this virtual race and take part of the Boston Marathon. Take a part of the Boston Marathon home with them. So, the arguments that are going back and forth on the internet is this all okay? Is this right? Is this ethical, morally ethical. I mean, the arguments have been quite interesting. You know, there's people, you know, who have ran Boston on many times. They qualified for it. You know, they've done everything right, and they got to run the most prestige race. And so when they get the idea of saying like, hey, these people can now do a virtual. Are these virtual people going to be considering themselves a Boston runner now? Like, do we have to deal with these people who have never qualified for the race and never had to go through that rigorous process and just sit in complete agony until you get the email that says like, yes, your time has been accepted, or no, your time didn't make the cutoff? They didn't have to go through that, but now are they going to go consider themselves a Boston marathoner now? No. And then we're thinking like, no, that's not right. Those people are frauds. They didn't run the actual race. They didn't go to the whole process. They didn't go, you know, through the whole qualification process or the training to get a qualifying time. And then the nail-biting dramatic thing about qualifying, you know, entering and applying for the race and then getting a time and then running the race itself and having those agonizing miles on Heartbreak Hill. They didn't go through that, so no, they can't be considered a Boston marathoner. But now they have this virtual race, so will they? So you see how the Boston organization has turned this whole thing up on its head. The announcement was made just a few days ago, so you know, with all the rumblings in the running world that this has caused, like, will the Boston Marathon organization change it? Will they say like, hey, we're not gonna do it anymore? And who knows? I don't see they will. I think they thought long and hard about this, and before they made the announcement, they kind of knew the people, you know, that the rumblings that this was going to create. So I don't think this is going to be. But yeah, that announcement was made. Pretty interesting. And what are your thoughts on it? Put those thoughts down below. What do you think about Boston Marathon, the Boston organization, Boston Athletics Association? What do you think about this decision that they made? Are you for it? Are you against it? Bonus points if you defend your answer in the comments down below. But do you think Boston was correct in allowing this? Because some may argue saying like, hey, if they are reducing the field size, then, you know, the Boston Marathon is losing a lot of revenue from many different ways that big races make money. You know, it's not just the runners who pay the registration fee, but there's also the other ways that money is made by, you know, how many people who are running the race, because now sponsorships can now pay more money based upon how many people are there and how many fans it attracts. And if there is a smaller race and that crowds along the side are discouraged, well then, you know, advertising dollars go way down. So some argue that this is the Boston Marathon or Boston Athletic Association. This is their way of trying to say, you know, have some revenue this year so that when the race can return back to its full glory and prestige, that they can still do it. They'll have the funds to still make a great race, and they can keep the staff on the payroll to make sure that the race is going to stay great. For me, you know, at least on the surface, you know, that's like the biggest argument for doing a move like this. But what do you think? Comments. Let me know those comments down below, and let me know how you feel about this decision, especially if you ran Boston. I definitely want to know what you guys think about that. But that's all I have for you here. Boston Athletic Association is allowing 70,000 runners to do the Boston Marathon with 0 qualification requirements. It's really interesting. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for you tonight. I hope you guys have a great day and a great evening. And whatever you are doing with your running this week, make it a good one. Until then, I'll see you at the next race, the next start line, wherever that may be. You guys take care of yourselves. We'll see ya.